have just seen the fumbling around that I did. I have to keep one of these on my desk. I ran out of candles. So tonight, we light the Bath & Body Works candle with our musical selection. There ain't no good in an evil-hearted woman, and I ain't cut out to be no Jesse James. I'm not going to be able to make it through this. And you don't go writing hot checks down in Mississippi, and there ain't no good chain gang. I made it. Tonight's aura is Frozen Lake, featuring Denise Finzi and Mattison Skoog-Simpson. Thank you for being here, everyone. Who's letting me be in charge of all of this is what I want to know.
I think that is such a good question, Jerri. Mattison, why do we let Jerri be in charge of all this?
Because she's the captain of the disco. It would not be anywhere near as sparkly if anybody else was in charge of it.
No.
You guys heard all of that?
Of course, we were listening.
Okay,
we were
good.
sitting here.
Well, it just alerted me that my Bluetooth was on, and I was like, if I just gave that entire performance, good.
You did.
I hit the low note.
You did. I noticed chain gang down there. What?
Okay. Who's feeling nervous?
I'm not feeling nervous. I've had quite the last half hour. I'm here. I'm so excited. No, nothing bad. Just, 7 things on the plate when the plate only holds 3. So, I look all wet. That's sweat.
You're glistening.
Because I've been, oh my God, I got to do oh my God, I get the dogs fed. And then but I tried to sit down like, everything is fine.
Yeah.
Everything is fine. Everything is fine.
This is a very, it's a good, discipline for me to have right now in my life, because you may not know this about me, Denise, but I'm rarely on time.
I didn't know that.
And the people that are in my life know that I'm like that, and we have discussions about it so that it's not so coming off as so disrespectful. But by God, I have been here every week on time for this.
Yes,
I'm working on it. I'm working on it, and I'm trying. So
I'm the opposite. I am notoriously early.
I believe.
If you have a party, I'm the one who shows up when you're still putting the plates out.
Really?
Yep. Yeah. But then I help you put the plates out. It's not terrible. It's just that I have the opposite kind of life fear. Is like, oh, I'm not going to make it. And
right.
Get myself a drink here. There we go. So
yeah,
but it's good for me to know that
fear that I'm not going to make it.
I'll just know.
Mattison, you like to be on time, but you also like for catastrophes to happen while you're trying to get there. Well, and then somehow you still make it on time.
I think I like to be on time, so I try and arrive early and hang out in the wings, and then sort of make my appearance right on time.
See,
when I was going from client to client a lot, I would literally park around the corner if I had 10 minutes to kill and answer a couple emails and then roll up to the lesson. Rather than
I do that too.
Be late, I would build in extra time and then just use that time.
We have phones, you can entertain yourself. Back in the day, you had to read a book.
I was gonna say, I would always just carry a book. I would just carry a book with me everywhere.
Yeah. That works too.
Well, all right. We've settled in a little. Everyone that's going to be here is here. More people will trickle in. Tonight we're talking to Mattison. Many people that watch this are repeat amazing followers. So you know who Mattison is, but for people that don't know who Mattison is, I need to stop introducing these people like them being one of my best friends is the most important thing on their resume. But I just like to highlight at the beginning of this that she is one of my very best besties. I have a handful of them, and she fills a very particular space. in my life that I hadn't found before, because I felt like, as well-meaning as all my really best friends were, they did not understand something about life that I understood, and I didn't ever want them to have to understand it. And then when I met her, I was like, oh, you understand something about life that I hope that I never have to understand. And I get to be around you, and you're going to teach me how you navigate this thing. And so that's important to know, because I think it's nice to say why you're really good friends with someone. And I was looking back at our lives, Denise, and our very first live, you did that for me. And you said all the things that you loved about me and all this, and it was like so wonderful. Just, I think it was nicer the second time, because I was looking at those videos to do something else, and I forgot. Well, I didn't forget it that it happened, but you know, you just put stuff like that out of your mind, and then you get that. It's like opening up a greeting card that somebody sent you, and you're like, oh, I forgot I had this. It was like that. So I just wanted to say that. But Mattison is many other things besides my friend. So tell us, if you wanted people to know you, like really know things about you, not just like some bio, but who are you? What should they know about you?
I'm just a really big believer in the power of second chances, like in every way that you can think possible. Like that's the core of it. And it comes out in a lot of different ways, but I think it kind of all comes back to that.
I love that.
That was a really good answer.
Oh,
that was a good answer.
That's a great start.
What happens after we've had 100 guests and you ask a question like that and they're like, God damn it. Oh, man. Oh, there's nothing left for me. That's a great answer.
It really was. So you're a dog trainer.
Yeah, I'm a dog trainer, and I'm a big old nerd, like very self-proclaimed of that, you know, something I maybe didn't used to embrace quite as much, and now I feel like I'm overcorrecting and being very like, hey, I'm the nerd over here, but I'm fine with that. I have a wonderful family, so I'm a daughter, I'm a wife, I'm a dog mom. I'm a survivor. Those are the words that I would probably, you know, assign to myself. Those are the words that I wear.
I could think of a lot more words than that. All of them are nice, by the way. Okay, you said that second chances influence everything that you do. So how does that affect the way that you look at dog training? And what I mean by that is how you deal with clients.
Well, I think, at the risk of kind of leaning into your thing too quick, the open-minded approach creates a space for people to come to us after, I think, having some not so good experiences with trainers. Like I've had people come to me really hurt by trainers in the past, and having that type of relationship fractured can really put a lot of mistrust, especially seeking out another professional. So I feel like in a lot of ways, I'm people's second chance, if not, you know, their third, fourth, fifth at trying to find something that actually connects and is willing to listen. So I think that's a big part of it. And I think also I'm always willing to be wrong, to show up and be wrong and say, all right, I'm going to take another shot at this, because that's a lot of how we get to the right solution for an individual dog in case, is rolling out a lot of wrong solutions along the way.
What is today?
Today is my freedom anniversary. It's my freedom day.
What is your freedom day?
It is the anniversary of the day that I was released from prison, where I was incarcerated for, it was a total of 5 years in the institutional setting, two different institutions. But I also spent 7 months on house arrest before, so that was 67 months total.
Did you learn how to train dogs in prison?
I did. I did, and that wasn't something that I expected. I didn't know how long I was going to be gone until the day I was sentenced because I took an open plea deal. So I took a deal in a range, and my sentence could have fallen anywhere within that range. So I didn't know I was going away for 5 years. And it also happened to be like the timing of this is what it is. I turned 25, and I think it was 3 days later, I was sentenced to 5 years straight, mandatory. And so it was half of my 20s, like quite literally half of my 20s. And because of a small amount of jail time credit and leap years, because you actually get that day, like you got a day tacked on in a leap year if you're there for 4 years. I got out 2 days before I turned 30. So my birthday is on Friday. So I turned 30 out here.
It's so crazy every time you say that, because I'm like, I got sober when I was 30. And like the process of recovering from stuff like this, you guys, takes years and years and years and years. And when you find someone out there that has like interests that you have, and they know kind of some of the depth of the despair and how much you had to climb out of that, like, please grab onto those people because it makes it so much less confusing when you're trying to get better. And even like a decade, of not being in that life. And it's still like Mattison and I still in conversation are like, is this just me? What? I'm freaking out. I'm having a meltdown. I'm having a meltdown. And we know that it's happening to each other. It's not like I like to get on the internet and say when I'm having a meltdown. Because I think that's just me. Not everybody's at that point, or maybe ever going to be at that point, nor do they have to, where they're comfortable doing stuff like that. But it really does take a lot of sounding boards. And then it also takes sounding boards that have not been in that side or have seen it from the alternative side segue into. Denise, didn't you used to be a corrections officer?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so can we talk about that? Is that okay? What was your perception before you went into that job about inmates? What was your perception after?
Well, first of all, I worked with juveniles.
Oh, that's right. That's
right. Once they're 18, when I was hired full time, I was actually with the pretty serious kids. So I was in the older boys unit, and that's a pretty, 16, 17, 18-year-old boys, that can be serious stuff. So that, you can work with the younger boys, 13, 14, 15, and it's theft and, joyriding. But you get up to those older kids, and I'm in an area that has a fair number of gangs, and the stuff gets pretty hard. When I went in, my undergraduate degree was psychology and sociology, and I wanted to help people. So, we all say that, right? You come out, I want to help. And I really thought I could somehow work with individuals and help them. But that's not really what you do there. And you're constantly walking a line between having relationships, because you do have relationships with all these people. I don't know if people understand that. It's not like there's the jailers and then there's the people who are in there. It's not like that. There's a lot of flow back and forth. You watch TV together. You do a lot of, you eat together, and you do make relationships. But the thing is, there's also a ton of manipulation. So a lot of these kids have grown up, their whole lives are really manipulation. Some of them have been probably in and out of that jail. I worked there 7 years, and some of those kids probably were in and out of there more than I was. I mean, they start when they're 10, 11, 12 years old. And so you're kind of constantly bombarded with this. You want to be helpful and you want to listen. And then you realize at the end of the conversation that they're actually about to hit you up for the candy bar that's behind you. And now that you're having this nice conversation and you're all feeling kind of good, and they're like, oh, do you think I can have that? And you have the right to give it to them. And all of a sudden it's like, wait, did this conversation mean anything? There was a lot of kind of, I don't know if disappointment's the word, but a sense of a lot of those kids. I actually think about them a lot. The things aren't going to go well. And I actually, when I was there, realized I didn't really think I could help individuals in there. And I went back and got my master's degree in public administration. My mental model was, I can't help individuals, but maybe I can change the system. And so I actually went to school to work.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to process. I didn't know that about you.
Yeah. So I went to, it was tough too. You know, at night I went to school, during the day I worked, and it was a tough time. And then I wanted to have a job in public policy. And so I did. I worked in the federal government for several years in the, not in public policy. That was a direction I could have gone. I didn't. So anyway, that was kind of where I went. I think I was struck with the degree to which the kids are survivors in ways that I don't understand. That kind of, it works for them. I worked in a community school for about 2 of those years. So you worked in the neighborhood and you just tried to get GEDs on some of those kids, and you did. So that was helpful. That was good. But some just tough stories, tough lives. These kids, they were behind the 8 ball early on.
Yeah.
Most of the kids in the place where I was at, it was a tough place. I don't miss working there. I have nightmares about it. I have nightmares that I'm going to lose my job, lose everything, and have to go back to work there. And it just crushes me.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Wouldn't want to do that again. I've done a lot of things, but dog grooming, worked with autistic kids, done a lot of stuff. That is one job. It's a hard job in its way. So I don't know what it's like today. I mean, that was 30 years ago. So I don't know where we're at today.
So Mattison, do you feel like those are the people mostly that end up incarcerated long term, or for sentences where they would be in prison as opposed to like just in jail?
Well, are you asking about like recidivism in general in this country?
Yes. Say what that means. Tell everybody what recidivism is, and because I don't think people know what that term is.
I'm not totally sure if it's the percentage or the likelihood of someone to reoffend and end up back in prison. So I'm not sure if it's represented as like a percentage of those released, how many come back.
I think it depends on how you say it. Like if you say recidivism rate, I think would be referring to it. But yeah, I think it's just that revolving door of people that are returning back into the system.
Yeah. And it's very high. I mean, we also incarcerate, our country incarcerates at a very, very high level compared to other countries in the world.
Yeah,
I think 25% that's also important.
25% of the world's population of prisoners lives here. That's shocking.
Wow. I think it's like 1 out of every 9 Americans now. It used to be 1 out of every 10, but I could be wrong.
Yeah.
So
and then also, that number. So there's the problem that you guys are talking about of the mindset of like basically unresolved trauma, and kids are learning survival styles of, well, I don't want to get too into that, but they're learning survival styles of like all or nothing manipulation games, basically like zero sum. I get everything, you get nothing. I got to figure out how to survive. So that's coupled with the privatization of prisons. And so I think that we really don't know anymore what the actual recidivism rate would be if you separated it away from the interests of capitalism, because they're doing things within those systems to also make it more likely that people will return to prison when they already were probably going to go back anyway. So that it's a really large problem.
That is in some ways and in some instances as simple as the institution getting a check for every inmate that walks in the door from the government. And I saw people incarcerated, sent to prison for 23 days. They never left admissions. They never left. They were there for marijuana possession or something. They were sent there by by a judge to the prison, and there's a lot of interconnectedness there.
I'm sorry, I thought Enzo was going to bark.
How much
Okay,
of an effort were they making in your institution? Because you came out a dog trainer, so here you are.
Yeah.
So how much of an effort were they making to help people learn skills that were usable that you could actually work with?
I think in general, even across both institutions that I was at and many of the ones that I've heard about, if you want to do something and you're willing to find, to sort of put yourself out there and find something, there's something available. I think that the first institution that I was at, making the choice to go and be, finding out about the different programs and then making the choice to go and be in that program, like that's a choice, and that's really important, because when you get out of general population and into a focused program, at least this one especially was like an honor dorm, you end up in a very different mindset and community, and that changes everything. So the recidivism of these programs compared to general population, which is where I started, right? Like I actually wasn't going to go and do this. I was just going to sleep my 5 years away, sleep and read as best I could. Mm-hmm. The recidivism it's again, I don't know the numbers, but it's wildly different. Wildly different.
Oh, I bet it's outrageously different. I mean, so so here you are, you find yourself here, you're going to read, you're going to sleep this away, you're not going to do any of this.
So I was heavily medicated too. When I walked through the door, they upped the dose of what the one med that I was on times 4 and added in 2 other meds. And when I started having really bad side effects,
antipsychotic.
It was a lot. And when one of the meds made me start like sleepwalking and sleep eating, from a top bunk, which was like a little scary. I know what you're
talking about.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
They told me I could pick out another drug and handed me a list of drugs to pick.
Yeah, I believe it.
And so
I believe
that's when I got off
of them all. Was it Seroquel that they upped like 4 times?
No, I think it was just Zoloft. They just were like, oh, well, the minimum dose we offer is, 200 milligrams, which was 4 times what I was.
Wow.
So I was sleeping like 18 hours a day because I had so many just drugs in me, and there was that's a problem. And I understand that drugged is easier to manage than violent, but the amount of over medicated inmates is it's really unsettling.
And then on top of that, I have outrageous side effects from Zoloft. I'm the type of person that needs to be hospitalized to be titrated off Zoloft because I might harm someone. And if they did that to me in there, I would have hurt somebody and been in more trouble.
Yeah.
That's just...
I mean, there was a lot. When I started sleepwalking, they actually told me to tie myself to my bed with my bed sheets.
I remember you told me that one time, and we both just laughed.
Wow.
Why not?
Wow. Oh my God. Here.
So I got off all of the meds. I started refusing them. I weaned off them as best I could. And I applied for this program because I was like, I just can't do this. I just can't do this for 5 years. This is not, and I saw the dogs. And once I saw the dogs, I was like, okay, this is something, there's something going on over there.
You finally had a motivator, I
finally had a motivator. Now, I did sign up there were 2 different dog programs. There was the Greyhound one, which was the we're just teaching you how to be pets, and we are kicking it, and we are chill, and we're just, and they're just loving their retired life. But I went to the larger dog program that had the staff daycare, the Humane Society, and the service dog. It had its own housing unit. It was big. It had a lot going on. And I saw them out walking in these lines every day. I'm like, they're doing things. And I'll tell you what, we worked. You were up at a certain time. Your bed was made military style. Your lockbox was pushed in. You were where you needed to be. Otherwise, you were gone. It was that simple. Because I went from open housing with 250 women in one room
I would have, oh my God. I can't,
To
no.
a 4-man cell. It felt like a palace.
I bet you
Felt
were
like
just...
a palace. With room for a kennel. With room for a kennel, y'all.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So that was that program. And it was like I said, it's a choice to go and be over there, but it's going to change your whole life, because you are going to be going, like, I remember the first week, especially as soon as they did count, because there was count time multiple times a day where you had to be on your bunk and they had to make sure everyone was still there. Very important. I was passed out at 8:00 count, like just so tired, because we would walk from 8 to 8:50, and then we had a 10-minute break. And I mean, walk with dogs, whether you had a dog or not. The first 30 days, no dog, a leash, no dog, just a leash. And I learned all the mechanics with no dog.
All right.
Right. Like, people are like, you make that look so easy. I'm so awkward. I've been doing this for a really long time, and I literally had to practice it until it was muscle memory. Like, I'm not coordinated. I
didn't
promise.
know you didn't have a dog when you, like, the first 30 days.
You could if you had somebody with you who didn't have a dog, who was an approved dog hand. Like, there were rules,
Yeah.
And like, these were service dogs being trained. These were staff dogs. These were dogs coming right in from the shelter. That was, you didn't want to drop a leash, because the dog could run to the barbed wire. That's not good.
Somebody asked, were they force-free in prison dog training?
I had no idea what that was until I came out into the chaos of the dog training industry. I learned and lived in a bubble, which was both good and bad, right? Because, like, the politics of the dog training industry is my least favorite thing about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's awful and uncomfortable and unnecessary. And it's bad because, honestly, the first, like, chunk of my education, in hindsight, was very compulsion. Like, very, maybe balanced on its good days. But that's just what I was taught. And then in the second sort of phase of that, it was much more positive reinforcement based. And so I was able to sort of, like, kind of learn, I guess, all the different approaches that are out there without knowing what they're called. I knew what felt right, and I knew how I felt mattered to me. So I was going to use, like, once I found something that felt better than what I had been taught, I stuck with that, because that, I believe that how I feel about getting results matter.
How many people dropped out, would you say, of that program? Like, if you started, what are the chances you were going to finish it?
That's a good question.
How would you define finishing it? Like being released from incarceration, still in the program?
Is that how it worked? You stayed in the program until you're released, or you graduated?
Well, kind of. There wasn't, let's see. It was only a 30-day process to become a handler, and, like, to be able to have a dog and be able to handle a dog. And then there was a series of tests, which was, I want to say it was like 10 tests over 10 weeks. And you had to get an 80% or higher across those exams. And it was about a lot of things, like, not just training, like, all dog related. There were some hands-on parts, learning different gear. That's actually what I loved about this program, was I actually taught the collars class for a long time, of, like, every single different collar. You learned about flat collars, you learned about martingales, you learned about half checks, you learned about full checks, you learned about halties, you learned about general leaders, you learned about prongs, you learned about good dogs. Like, you had to know the specifics of every single thing and how to fit it and how it was just very mechanical, of, like, an education. And in some ways, I think that is, it was very good, having the collar passed around and being taught how to fit it and just things like that. So I think passing that exam, most people passed it, but it took, like, people studied, and if they had to retake the test, they retook the test. I think people more ended up getting, like, removed from the program more so than, like, not graduating, because, like, okay, so the rules of, like, your lockbox has to be pushed under, you couldn't be cussing out on the yard, or your inmate leadership could write you basically a reprimand. And if you got 5 of those in 90 days, you were gone. And I'm telling you, even getting 1 was a real pain because you had to serve this kind of BS community service on Saturday morning wearing your state uniform when you could have been kicking it in your sweats, and it sucked. But you learned not to get these interlocks and to push your lockbox all the way under and to be on time and to, you know, not disrespect your housing leader. For, you know, each hall had a leader. And the difference between that unit and other units was we didn't have people whose job it was to clean the unit. So like in the other unit, like there was like a porter, there were like, you know, a team of porters, and that was their job, and they were cleaning the unit. In our unit, everybody pitched in with everything because everyone was a dog trainer, and that was our job. So we all did jobs around just maintaining the community. And guess what? Sometimes it was your job to scrub the trash can that the poop bag gets like thrown in, you know? And it was just, I know, it was disgusting. I had to do it once. But then after I did that, I got to be on stair sweeping duty from then on. That was my deal. I was like, okay, listen, I'm going to do it this time. So
but you know, what's coming to me is you got to be at the right place in your brain at the right time. So if you have been incarcerated 5 years earlier, 5 years later, like there's so many things that would impact, like I'm just thinking about people in my life and thinking about people who might have been like at the cusp and others who would just lose it and wouldn't be able to see out why it matters what you do today into the future and would make all the excuses and not do the work. And then other people, if the opportunity shows up at exactly the right, like there's got to be everything at its right time, you know, and that's luck. There's just an element of luck that you got in there and you were in the right frame of mind to make the good decisions, and it worked. And you know, you came out with some pretty good skills, so that's kind of amazing.
Yeah, sometimes you have to put yourself in the position because you might get lucky. Like always be ready for that, because it could be, you know, that time that's the time. Like people are always asking me, what was the thing that finally made you get sober? What was the thing that finally made you know? I'm like, consequences, lots of consequences. And then that put me in the right place at the right time to hear what I needed to hear. And it's hard to accept sometimes that the right place at the right time for you is prison or a psychiatric facility. I know. We have cried many a tear about it, Denise. We really have. Like, it's hard to accept. Like, that's why if you go to meetings long enough, you'll hear people say, I'm so grateful I'm an alcoholic. I'm so grateful I went to prison. I'm so grateful that I lost my children and I had to get them back. And it's like, what?
You know, and see gratitude in it.
Yeah.
You absolutely have to. You absolutely have to, because there is a positive. I didn't actually have anything to really like live for before. I didn't have a passion. I didn't have anything that I felt like was worth doing. And that's really empty.
Yeah. I think that a lot of young people feel that. Like,
were you also an addict or an alcoholic?
I went through the 12 steps of Codependence Anonymous. I definitely have had issues with alcohol, but my bigger issues are a little deeper. That was a bit of a symptom. So the 12 steps that I went through of CODA are pretty similar.
Okay.
Just more focused on identity and relationships in your life.
Yeah.
Say what that is for everybody that doesn't know what that is. What CODA?
Codependence Anonymous.
So what codependency is. Like, a lot of people don't actually know what codependency is.
And that's because
I have
codependency is so many different things.
Yeah, I would describe it as putting confluence, which I'll say here in a second, putting confluence as a priority above all. So confluence is like the need for it to be okay between me and Denise. I need it to be okay between us. And so that becomes paramount to, maybe that's not good for you, for it to always be okay, because there's all these behaviors going on that are not something we need to be okay about. I need to get mad at you. You need to address that I am upset. And so what happens is the prioritization of confluence, I think, is what we're calling codependency. That's the way that my brain understands it, but there's yeah,
For
like
me,
Mattison said, there's a lot of ways of.
it's like, and again, like everyone kind of has their own brand of codependency, but for me, it's about the sense of self and your identity being external, like having placed it in external places to where it no longer is within you. So I like my identity before, like earlier when you asked me like, who are you? There would have been no answer. I would have had 0 words to come up with. And that makes it makes me sad for who I was. And that was almost 10 years ago now.
So
yeah,
I thought that codependence, my definition would have been the person who makes bad behavior of another possible.
An enabler.
So your husband is an alcoholic, you're calling in sick for him. The one that covers, the one that cleans up, the one that makes the excuses. And, you know, I don't know if this is true, but also, well, it makes sense based on what you're saying, Mattison, because that person is wound up in that. And that sometimes when the alcoholic becomes sober, then now you have a new problem, which is their job is gone. And now they almost want you to be an alcoholic again so they can go back to having a job.
Yeah.
That's what they did.
That's also a version of codependency, like the nurturer.
So you were like, no, my drug was more codependency. I wasn't ready for you.
It took me a long time to figure that out. It took me a long time of going to AA and NA and feeling like something was not ever right with that. And then finally landing in a CODA meeting and being like, oh, okay,
this is what it is. Yeah.
This is the one.
A lot of people find themselves in Al-Anon for that same reason, because they are recovering codependents, and they'll come to AA meetings sometimes with their spouses, and they'll sit next to them and they'll be like, because I'm a recovering codependent. And like, it's funny and it's cute because they're there together and they're really doing it. But okay, so once you were in there and once you were training, what was that evolution of that? So you were training, you got in, you're a little greenhorn, and then you're training, but at some point you get more responsibility.
Yeah, it was a weird evolution. It's probably not what you expected. So at first I just was like they called it a senior handler once you passed the exam. And no surprise to you, got 100% across the board. I was named top dog of my class.
Par for the course.
Yep. So I signed up I knew I wanted to be there and stay there. So I signed up for the apprenticeship, which meant tracking hours, which is that 4,400 hour apprenticeship that I clocked when I was there. That's 4,400 hours.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. So then I started just like the areas that I was interested in. I would teach classes to the newbies, the callers. I found like a folder full of old newspaper and magazine articles on nutrition. So I was like, I can study this and teach this, because they had a class twice a day, every day on the schedule. So they were constantly like, all right, who has something to teach about? Like, who has something to talk about? So there were just a lot of opportunities where it was like, somebody volunteer, or we're going to tell everybody to sign up. And sometimes it was just a rotation. So I just started showing up because it felt easy enough to do. And then I guess I got into grooming around about the same time as my bunkie signed me up for a running group, and I was getting off all those meds. So, and I remember, mind you, I was 230 pounds.
About to say, stop the story right there.
That's the missing piece of the puzzle.
So now you got the meds, the weight, the running, the passion,
the routine, and the passion, and like waking, all of it happened all at the same time. And I got into grooming, which was like, there was only 1 or 2 groomers, but there was a lot of grooming. So I just became really, really busy, and really had hands on pretty much all the dogs that got groomed for a period of time, and also taught other people how to groom. So that included the staff dogs, so staff at the prison. It was the biggest prison in the state for women, but other staff, like state employees, could bring their dogs there, And yeah, and then the service dogs, there were a couple poodles that I got to do like some fun haircuts where I could like buzz little designs into their hip and stuff. And that was like, you know, Viz was this poodle that I give a mohawk constantly, and these little like spiky. We tried to make them look like little I don't know,
little
punk rock.
Little
Yeah. So yeah, that was fun until it wasn't. Grooming was exhausting, and I think it's way harder than training, and I'll never get back to it because it was so exhausting and so hard. And like,
it is hard.
I did third shift baths. I had anal glands expressed in my face. Like, you just don't want it. It's just, I give so many props to groomers. I just think their job is way harder than ours.
Yeah.
Okay, I got to stop you there.
Yeah.
So I groomed my way through college.
Yeah.
I groomed my way through college.
I groomed my way. That did not sound good.
That is not how I got my way through college, Denise.
And one day I went to an interview for another job, and a flea climbed out of my hair and onto my forehead in the middle of the interview.
Oh no.
I mean, I got the job, but
Damn.
I would have been like, oh, that gnat.
yeah, just a little something there came home with me tonight.
Oh no.
Dog grooming is hard, physically hard work.
So hard. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally respect those people out there doing that.
Same.
That's not easy. Be nice to your dog groomers.
So then I got a like joint leadership position over the Humane Society portion, because it was again like three different divisions, if you will. And that was really cool because that's really where my heart is and has been for a long time. So we got 2 pull dogs out of the shelter. And, when a dog is brought into this program, unlike at, a traditional, I don't know, facility or daycare where you have many dogs to one person, think very much the opposite. You have many people to one dog.
Yeah.
So it's just the amount of individual attention that these dogs get is incredible. And I had a regular dog, even when I was grooming, I had a regular daycare dog because it was I don't know if you saw my post a little bit ago about him, Pepe, my sergeant's dog. And he was like, I don't know, I think he was lying about his age for a couple of years because he was 16 when I got there. And when I left, he was still saying he was 16. And I'm like, how old is Pepe really? No, but he was just the sweetest old man, and he just didn't move a lot. So he was perfect when I had like a full schedule of grooms because he could just like lay on a blanket in the corner and just he was blind. He would just lift his head and sniff every so often and then go back down. But I was only there at that facility for just under 3 years. So like a little bit more than half of my time. And then I went up to a different facility where they were looking to start grooming. So I was able to kind of bring that up to their dog program and kind of show, that was more of a reentry center. So they had a higher turnover of inmates, like in a good way. But they needed someone to come and train some of the folks that were going to be there a little bit longer to be able to pass on that knowledge appropriately. So they rode a bunch of us up, and I spent the rest of my time there and ended up, it wasn't like a full grooming job, which is good. So I ended up training a lot more dogs at that point, and was able to like, again, have a regular dog, which was for me a lot of fun. I had the same poodle 3 days a week for 18 months and got very, very close with him until he actually bit me. And that was one of the like more significant bites, which is interesting because it's harder when it's a dog that you know really well. And it was also a redirection. So on the inside of my thigh. And it's like one of those lessons that just like, I learned so much in that moment from that bite. And I was also wearing 2 pairs of pants, which helped.
Wow.
Yeah. That's a good bite.
Yeah. So that's how you ended your time there. You were still in the program when you left.
No, I semi-retired when I was getting towards the end of my my sentence because I just had been I felt really overworked after about 4 years of that and like the 4,400 some hours. I remember there was one month where out of 31 days in the month, I had a dog 29 days, and 14 of those were overnights for 24 hours. So the amount of like work and hands-on time with the dogs, I was just physically exhausted. So for the last little bit, I like semi-retired and went and worked in the laundry room. It was still in the dog unit, so I was doing all the dog laundry and still helping out. And I would still help out with like grooms and still walk dogs for them. But I did sort of phase my way out towards the end.
So when you went back home, you had to stay, were you on house arrest when you got back home?
No, so the supervision that I had to be on is something called post-release control, which is kind of like parole basically. And I couldn't technically leave the state that I was in unless I got permission from that state and also the other state. So that was a whole other filing process. And I went through that. And actually, I had at the 4-year mark out of 5, I had filed for an early release, which was not approved. So I ended up doing the full 5 years. And then they did approve the interstate compact. So I was able to be released, back to my family where I would have support and things like that. Because I was 10 hours away from my family where I was incarcerated. So I didn't get to see them all that often. My dad would come out a couple times a year. My mom would come out with my brother when they could. But it was hard. It was, I really can't discount the impact it had on them too.
Mm-hmm. I can't imagine just like Layla just is gone. And I know where she is and I can't see her. And I know how people in prison are. And like my precious daughter, like, oh my God. I'm not trying to be morose, everyone. Like Mattison and I do this all the time where we say like how horrible the feeling is and then just sit there.
You ride it all the way to the station.
Yeah, take it all the way in, because if you don't, then you stop it up and then it just becomes this like abstract thing that happened to somebody else. But when you really can be like, wow, my mom had to come to a psychiatric facility to watch me crawling around underneath chairs and punching security guards and writing all over my face. Like how, like it's funny sometimes, but if I really think about it, I do try to think about the other people because I remember how it felt. I don't need to remind myself. But how they felt, I think, is a story worth telling myself over, whatever it is that I say in my head. So, okay, so that part of your life is coming to a close. You get out, it's Freedom Day. Well, let's fast forward a little past that. Was there a part of you that was like, I can't train dogs because then people will know how I learned how to train them? Or were you
I didn't want to train dogs because I didn't want. No, I was going to go back to the life I had before because
that's
people,
right.
I was going to go back to
I'm
this
just
corporate
laughing
America,
because I know that ended not good.
You're right. I did go back to what I did before. People don't want their lives out here to look like they did in there. That makes sense. That brings up a lot of things, which sometimes it still does, and that's okay too.
Yeah. So how did that happen? That you were like, I'm not doing this ever again, and then you're like, I'm training dogs
forever for the rest of my life.
For the rest of my life without ceasing.
So at first I couldn't find a job. I wanted to just chill and just like get my feet under me, but I really needed to get a job and get some money. I saved as best I could while I was in there, but it was still not a lot to start my life over, and I had a lot of debt catch up, over 5 years. So I couldn't get a job, so I got a job at a dog daycare making $9 an hour, which was not enough to live. And so I kept looking, and then I got a really good corporate contract, which I did not finish because I was doing both. So I was working, it was supposed to be a part-time gig, the corporate contract, but it was like 39.75 hours a week. So barely. And then I was working training dogs. Through the relationship with the daycare, I was able to start getting some clients. And it honestly became impossible to show up and do the corporate job that felt really meaningless. Like, it felt like what I was doing, anybody that could navigate PowerPoint could really do it. Like, I just didn't feel like I was making a difference. And then here I was working with these dogs, and people are like, "Oh my God, you're changing my life!" Like,
Yeah.
and it became impossible to continue. And I literally left the contract 6 months into a 1-year contract. And it was a great job. Like, and I remember my boss was very supportive, and she is a friend of mine, but she said, just don't expect to come back.
I love you, but this is it.
Right. Yeah, well, but it was a very final decision, you know, to have a 12-month contract and exit early was not a relationship forming move with that business. But that wasn't what my heart wanted. It wasn't what my life is supposed to be about. So I went all in with the dog thing. And then now it's been 2 years since I've kind of gone like completely solo and just, you know, been more open about my story and like, you know, rebranded. And because there was the fact that I was training dogs and I was absolutely terrified. And Jerri remembers this because this is when she met me. I was so terrified that somebody was going to find out that I was a felon. Oh my gosh, it was like eating me up inside. And somebody did at one point during a lesson be like, "Oh, I tried to find you on Facebook, but all I found was this article about this girl that went to prison." And again, 230 pounds. I didn't really look like I did. So they didn't know it was me, but I was just constantly living, feeling in fear. And there was this dog trainer that wanted me to come and work for him. And I remember him saying that I should basically start the process of changing my name to my, at that point, soon to be husband's name, so nobody would ever find out. And like that stuck with me over these last
I just want to
4
wring
years.
his neck for saying that to you.
It's why I'm gonna hyphenate my name and never get rid of my last name, because like I could never just throw that away, you know. And to have to live in fear constantly that somebody's gonna find something out. Like Jerri knows, we're like, fine, we'll just open up the doors. You can see the skeletons in the closet. You know, it's like I'm gonna tell it before it gets told on me. It became how I had to live. I had to just feel some type of control over my own narrative, because that narrative for a long time in my head was I'm a really bad person. And it took a lot of work, a lot of work to know that, you know, I'm a good person that's done bad things. And I'm trying really hard to make up for it.
Yeah, I will not let anyone hold my life against me, is what I always tell myself. No one is going to hold my life against me. That's not going to happen.
Do you think, because the problem with me is I'm one person and there's millions, right? So all I can say is that if it was me, I would actually, if I had a choice, I would actually hire the felon dog trainer over the non-felon dog trainer.
That's what I think too.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't know, am I that far off? Because my thinking would be, hot damn, you've been through it. Here you are. You learned all that. That tells me a lot about a person that you. So I don't know. Maybe people in the comments can weigh in. I don't know. Am I that unusual about that?
I do think that that's a progressive. I think that that's very progressive because it's compassionate. I think it's also a very astute observation that you can only make after a certain phase of development as a human, that you would even be aware of what that person probably had to go through to finish those programs, to learn those things, to complete these things. And then now they're out here and they're applying for jobs and they're trying and they're like, I'm finding it. I almost said something mean. Like, people are out here complaining about Stanley Cups, complaining about being late to class because the parking spot wasn't right, or whatever little small insignificant things that we tell ourselves are in the way of us getting to that goal or why we didn't do something. So when you see someone who, I think about people that ride the bus all the time. There are people that get up hours before they have to be to work. They ride through 9 stops for 2 hours just to be at work. I would have never done that. I would have never had the fortitude to do something like that when I was younger, because I was an entitled, privileged snot. And that's just the way that I was. And then eventually that will turn on you. And I internalized that. And then it was about self-destruction, because I internalized all the things that selfish, entitled, spoiled brats get. They get what they give. And so then all that became like what Mattison was just saying. The narrative was that I was a bad person and that I had done so many things that it just was not really surmountable. And that's very difficult to overcome that. So when you see someone, especially someone that's been incarcerated, most of us will never understand ever for even a moment what that feels like, to have your freedom taken away from you in that way, whether it was your fault or not. It is a very specific kind of fear. And I'm speaking from my own experience, but a different one, to have someone take your freedom and you cannot go home. You literally cannot go home. Nothing's happening. There's no amount of praying is going to get you there. You're in that moment for however long, and you have to endure it. There's only one way through. You got to endure it. And then when you come out of it, you're in a completely different, it's transition, which is hard for all of us. It's hard for our dogs. And then you have to somehow fit into a society that isn't built for people that are transitioning out of really traumatic experiences. Everything's really fast. We're kind of disconnected from each other in a lot of ways now. So when I see that in a person, I mean, we should be best friends. Tell me all your secrets. What did you, really? I mean, for real, I'm like, how did you do that? And then sometimes I don't ask them. There's something real particular that I don't ever ask Mattison. I just watch her because I don't think she could tell me. I don't think she would have words to say, well, these are the steps that I took. And then I just have to kind of watch and pay attention to the evolution of what she thinks about herself and what she thinks about the situation. And then that tells me, oh, I see what she did there. But if you're not watching and you don't know people that are really trying to change something very profound, you miss out on those moments. And this is exactly why we want people to train their dogs and we want people to be involved, is because I just made a video about this the other day. When you bear witness to something's change, to someone's change, that's where the magic is. It's not in this technique. It's not in this, having this certain dog food or having this certain type of clothes or going to this particular, it's none of that. It's just being there and watching and being like, I'm still going to be here even when you do dumb stuff and you look dumb. and then you're still there. And they're like, oh, okay, I trust that you are going to be here and I don't have to worry about that, so I can focus on other things. And then they start to build these other areas of their life. That was a really long monologue.
That's okay. We're all just sitting here listening and learning a thing or two, and it's all good.
Yeah, I mean, this is the kind of stuff that I wanted to talk about, because I just don't think, we talk about that we do stuff, but I don't think sometimes we talk about the details of the individual steps that we took or the small things that we learn. That's one of the most profound things I think that just today, I was talking to Chelsea about this, that I love that I have to, I will listen to a topic because I know that I need to understand it, and I'll listen and listen and listen, and I'm like, okay, got it. I know exactly what rumination is. And then I go on with my life. And then 6 months, a year later, somebody makes the video and talks about it, 60-second video. And I'm like, oh my God, I get it. I get it. Like today, my epiphany was that rumination comes from abuse. I don't sit around ruminating about you, Denise. I don't ruminate about you, Mattison. I don't ruminate about so-and-so. They don't abuse me. I have a normal relationship with them that's healthy. You know, there's nothing like that there. So why do we obsess like that over things that are like unhealthy? So my brain was just like, I get it now. I only ruminate over toxic behaviors. That took me years to get that, to simplify it down into like a little, like there's this part of the Bible that says, make sure that you write your messages big so that they can be read on the run. And that's what I think of, like, what is this big statement? How do I fit all of this into my Mary Poppins bag and make it so simplified? And that was it. If I'm ruminating about something, it's probably because there's toxic behavior in there and I'm trying to make it make sense, and it doesn't make sense because it's toxic.
But that's so cool, because if you can remember that when you're ruminating, because that's the hard part. Like if you started it, if your brain can say, wait, this is important, right? Because then that can change the trajectory of the entire thing, right? So that's kind of just, if you can remember it when you need, just kind of like I tell people, don't train dogs when you're upset. Most of us know that it never goes well. But the problem is you have to identify that feeling of being upset early enough in the chain that you can actually take a new path. So it needs to be early so you can say, I need to stop and put the dog away. Because if I continue on this path, it's not going to go well. And actually, I was just talking to somebody, I was at a seminar this weekend, and she's my age. She goes, you know, Denise, it's only the last few years that I've known this for years and years and years. It's only the last few years that I've been able to change my trajectory when I started feeling it, even though knowing isn't the same as acting on. Lots of us know it's the right thing to do. That doesn't mean we change our direction. But it's just interesting to talk to somebody my age. And I understand that, because to this day, sometimes I do this. I'm better all the time, but still, there's a lot of things we know. So that's very cool about rumination. I'll have to think about that. I don't do a lot of ruminating. So that's good, right? It means I basically have mostly not toxic relationships.
It's like a measure of what the relationships in your life are producing in your head. So if the relationships in my life, even if they're not perfect, like sometimes we rub up against each other. That sounded weird, but you know what I meant.
We did.
Sometimes iron sharpens iron, but so I don't think I mean just agreeing and everything being fine all the time. But how do I want to say that? If I'm going around about my day and I'm able to do the things that I need to do and want to do without rumination, for me, that's a sign that I'm headed in the right direction.
You're in a healthy place.
Yes. If I find myself sitting and thinking about something that someone else did or said, or something I did or said, I can be sure that, especially if it's me, that I did some toxic ass shit. You know, like because I don't sit around and ruminate over something really helpful that I may have said. I'm not going to go think all night long tonight about how I said rumination is from toxic behaviors. Oh, you really got that one, Jerri. You know, like I'm just going to go on. But if I said something I shouldn't have, and I knew I could have done a better job.
I ruminate then. Lots of rumination about my errors.
Yes, it can be our toxic behaviors too. So it's like, that's such an easy way to identify something that needs to be evaluated if you keep thinking about it. Otherwise, your brain has decided that that's not, everything's fine and we're going to move on. Now, if you're a sociopath, I don't think this applies.
It may not work for you. But if you're just a normal, especially I really think women are particularly good at remembering things that happened 20 years ago where we made some stupid comment at a party. It's like, who remembers some stupid comment you made? We do that. We remember just the most trivial things, and they do kind of stick a little bit. Now, I was telling somebody, one of the cool things about, because sort of my life change was really moving from being an exceptionally self-centered, judgmental human being to somebody different. And lots of things took place between then and now. But I said, when I read these comments and people are saying mean spirit, I just saw something on one of my threads. Somebody said something just disparaging, who are all these stupid people in society or something like that. I don't remember, something like that. And I just looked at that and I thought, and I mentioned this to someone recently, I don't think that way anymore. And as a result, I'm a much happier person. Like, not seeing the world as being stupid, not seeing everybody who's different than me. It means I don't have that, because there's a stew, there's an anger and self-righteousness, and it's not a healthy stew. It feels good the moment you're doing it because you're the smart one and they're the dumb one. But it's very harmful, right? It's over time, you're getting your life gratification for the wrong reason. And when you stop feeling that, because you just start seeing things differently, people are trying their best, right? So you start looking at it that way. And then you have so many more opportunities to feel good because you did a nice thing. So while you might not ruminate, at least you go home and you say, I made the world a slightly better place today over some small thing. It's not hard to be kind. It's actually easy once you learn to do it. That's the hard part, because it takes time to get past your own little demons. But if you can do that, I think you just end up in a better, healthier, and that's dogs, people, family. It's just like, we're all just trying. My friend,
it's a good tagline to remember, that everyone is probably trying their best.
And sometimes your best sucks. But
my best has been pretty rough at times. Melissa, you asked, what is the difference between a perseverating thought and a ruminating thought, like rumination and perseveration? And I thought that I knew, but I wanted to be sure. So perseverative thoughts are the category. Rumination falls into that. So rumination,
I did not know that.
Worry, obsession, intrusive thoughts. You could probably put addictive thoughts, like the compulsion from addiction. You could put suicidal ideation into that. That's a really good question. I'm glad that you asked so I could look and make sure that I haven't been telling myself that it means something else. Perseveration is basically like when you get stuck on something, which, like, an example of that would be how I told everybody that I say the states alphabetically at night when my mind loops, because it will loop song lyrics. And I don't mean a whole song. I mean a phrase of a song over and over and over and over, like a hammer in my head. And there are things that overstimulation brings that on a little bit more. But I don't actually listen to music a lot anymore because of that. Because that would be like a perseverating thought, because it's repetitive, it's intrusive, it's persistent, but it's not rumination. Rumination is a type of perseveration. Wow, that was a lot of consonants and pronunciations. That was a good question. Okay.
Learned a new word.
What's that?
I learned a new thing. I did not.
I know, we learned a new word tonight.
I did not know that.
So the last thing that I want to talk about is how you went from that phase of being, I'm out, I'm okay, I'm out in the world functioning, to where you are right now.
I don't know that I have the answer to that yet. I'm still doing it, right?
Yeah. Well,
I feel like I'm still
I have
in
an
that
observation
phase.
answer, but it wasn't me. It wasn't happening to me. But what I observed was that you were really determined to find, I'm sorry. You were really determined to find someone out there that was like you and that could understand what you were thinking and saying. I'm sorry because I'm speaking for you, so I'm like, I don't know if this is right. I also felt like you had like the most untapped potential of anyone I've really ever met in my life. And like in the beginning, I was like, oh, this chick's really smart. And then as time went on, I was like melting into the floor at my incompetence all of the time. And it was good for me because I've always kind of, well, I don't want to say I'm always the smart friend, but I've always been among the intelligent in the group of friends that I have. And I didn't wear it very well. And so it's been nice for me to be around someone that wears it well and that is modest and humble about it, because it helps me frame like my language and the way that I talk to people. But what I really noticed was how important the people around you were, and how like important discipline and showing up and being consistent was for you, but also giving yourself grace when you were having a really hard time. And then also reaching out and just saying that you were having a hard time, even if I didn't have the answer or I didn't know like what I was really supposed to do. You were just like, ah! You would say it like real nice though. That's how I would say it. And and we would talk about it. And that small action has made such a difference in my life, in your life, and then by default, the lives of the people around us, is just getting a buddy. Get a buddy. Get a buddy. They don't even need to have the same problems as you. You just both need to have problems. That's the qualifier. You got problems, I got problems. And then you hold each other accountable. So for example, if I would talk shit, Mattison typically is just quiet. Unless it's like really warranted and we're having a legitimate discussion, and then it will be an adult manner that we have that discussion. She just won't say anything. So I'll say something and then she's like, yep. And right there, I'm like, well, I can't say that anymore. Not because I think, but because I respect her opinion so much. And when I do something that makes her be like, ugh, about me, I'm like, because it bothers me. It's just the same as if I thought Denise was mad at me. I would have to try to resolve that. Or if I thought someone else close, it's just a really good practice to make sure that you're always in alignment with your character. But you have to have friends that will say, Denise is we were talking about this the other night. This is what Denise does. And you learn.
You got my shrug pretty good.
Yeah, like you just learn that there are these little tells that the people that are close to you have. And when you step outside of who they know you to be or what they know you to be about, they should say something to you. Well, I don't know, Jerri.
From this day forward, my lives are going to be totally different because people throw out random comments and I'm like, well. That's the 4 seconds it takes my brain to decide what I want to say.
Well, may we forever haunt you. An important part of me working up I don't know, I hate to call it courage because it's not courage to show up and talk about this. Like it's still scary. It's just showing up scared. It's just me learning to do things scared. And that's something I've learned from Jerri is like feelings are just feelings and they're temporary. Like it's just discomfort. It's just this, like those things move on and you build resilience to be able to just continue to do what you wanted to do with that present. But just having that person to be able to have like a judgment-free, like a sounding board, or sometimes a void to just like
the void
throw it into. Yeah, like sometimes I feel like it is a sounding board and we're trying to get we're trying to rational to like work through something together, but sometimes it is just like I just need to get this out there because I can't hold it alone. I can't hold on to it. It's not something that is healthy to hold on to. And we've just gotten to this place where I don't know, maybe we even said it at one point. It was like, well, it can't be worse than anything I've ever heard, right? Like, it's not going to be the worst thing that I've heard. So like, whatever it is, just shout it my way. And we both kind of felt the same way. And it became like a very good place to be able to dump those things. So I'm very, very grateful for that.
I have a question for you then. And Amanda down here says, that is courage. So my question to you is, if what you just described is not courage, then what is courage?
I don't know.
Because I don't think courage is doing things when it's easy. And Jerri and I have talked about this. Courage is doing it when it's hard. I mean, it's easy to do things when there's no obstacle and everybody agrees with you and you stand up and shout, me too. I mean, that's not courage.
It just doesn't, courage is always feel very great. It doesn't always feel that way.
To me, courage is doing it when it's hard, when you don't want to do it, when it's frightening, when people aren't going to agree with you. That is I would say what you just described is my definition of courage. If you're having a good time, that's not courage. Like when people say, I have an unpopular opinion, and then they spout a very popular opinion. Well, I see this all the time. And then everybody's like, rah, rah, rah in the comments. And I'm like, no. Courage is saying it and getting shot at. That's courage. Yeah. It's speaking up because you believe it's right and you don't want to speak up. If you want to speak up, I don't know what that name is, but it's not the same.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the reason I'm so vocal about a lot of things is because that's what I'm trying to always build, that muscle in me, that courage muscle, you know, because when you get followers and you get a blue check mark and you start going and commenting on stuff, guess whose comments are at the top of the feed? It's you, baby. And so I go out and I say what I think about things, and I say what I think about this over here and that over here. And I comment stuff because I want to always practice, even in the comment section, being who I am, you know, here or in private conversations. Oh,
hey, little guy.
Hey, little guy. Interesting. Oh.
Hi there.
Hi. You're such a photogenic child.
Yes.
You really are.
Never forget that him on the carousel.
I know, and it was like to it was to Fat Boy Slim. Wake
so good
up, kids, you got the dreamers in you. I know, he's amazing. He's my performative child for sure.
Yep.
All right, well, we could probably spend like 4 hours talking about all this and unpacking this, but I just wanted to give Mattison a space to start talking about this in like long form. She's done it on some. This is great for active management. I don't want to hear it. No, we don't spank the dogs with it. We put peanut butter on it and we freeze it. And then we hold it like this in the car, and then they can lick it. And there's a dog in here right now that I taught this to. And it was because of you, Denise, because you were like, the car is actually really great for reactivity. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's right. It's like a hamster bubble. And so you can just drive aggressive dogs around. And
I love that.
It works. And she was like the first person that I really saw it from the beginning when we tried it through completion to like, oh my God, she's driving by a dog and her dog is not trying to bust out the glass of the back. Are you in here?
Better. That's better than how I do it, because I just have food all over my damn car because I just keep literally taking handfuls and throwing it over the seat, and then there's just food everywhere. Yeah. That's a much better strategy.
Yeah, you can bring a lot of them. So you put peanut butter or frozen yogurt.
Yeah.
And then you freeze them. And then when you take them, you wrap like foil or saran wrap around it. You keep it right in where your parking brake is.
Exactly.
I don't know what it's called, what Aussies call parking brakes. I'm sure they have a cool name for it. She's Australian. And I learned so much about Australia through her. And you just pick it up and you can still drive. You can still do everything. And you just go like this. Or you can go like
this. I love that.
Yeah. I mean, you got to get creative.
Good.
Okay, well, thanks for sharing your story and the honesty and vulnerability. It will make a bigger impact than you might realize, leaving this chat feeling inspired.
Nice.
That's a wonderful note to leave it on.
That is so nice.
I know. It's, you know, oh, she is here. She said, bah, ha, 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 handbrake. It's called a handbrake?
That's what Mark would call it.
You guys need to get it together. All right, let's do our changed my life. Thank you. I love you, Em. Tilly is was certainly one of the most explosive dogs that I had ever worked with. But this one thing sticks out to me. Well, a lot of things stick out to me, but Emily took a video one time of her in the elevator with Tilly, who wears a muzzle all the time for safety and because she's required to, because the laws are different there. She could not ride the lift. You made me start saying lift, Emily. She couldn't get on it at all with another person. And so she was making a video of how she was like, oh my God, we're on it. There's another person. We've got this. Everything's great. Like, it was wonderful. Well, this woman goes to step onto the lift. And she's like, you know, Emily says, if you'll just move over, we'll step to the side. And she gave her very clear instructions. So the lady comes on and she's like, should you even have a dog like that? Should you even have? And Emily, without missing a beat, she was like, she has the right to live. And yes, I do think that I should have her. And she just very simply said, like, yes, I don't give a shit about what you're saying right now because I'm doing all the things. And she really was doing all the things. And everybody was safe. And she stuck up for her dog and advocated for herself. And she didn't lose her cool. And they walked off of the elevator. And
I remember that.
That is like, for a dog that can't even, I mean, could not even, she was explosive. I mean, it was almost kind of beautiful, you know, like just to see a dog to go from that to her feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm seeing these changes and I'm not taking for granted all the things we take for granted. Driving down the street and your dog just looking out the window, she did not have that. It was an explosion every 50 seconds, so that's not the story for them anymore. I'm so glad I got to tell that story. But that's where the spatula came from. Emily and Tilly in Canberra, Australia. All right.
Somebody said, I love this community and look forward to Wednesday night live like my mama looked forward to Wednesday night Bible study.
Oh,
I love that. I just feel like there's a little therapy that goes on here. There's a little dog training that we cover a lot of territory on these things.
Last week we were laughing hysterically and talking about science, and this week we're like digging in, really getting into it, getting into it. So thank you, Mattison. Everybody smile. We got to take our selfie. Okay, I didn't mess it up that time. I'm going to post this, you guys, on Instagram, but I'll also, right after, I'll put it on YouTube. So if anybody didn't catch the whole thing and you want to listen to it or you need caption, it'll be on there.
Excellent. So nice to spend the afternoon with you two.
Thanks for having me.
Bye, everybody.
Talk to you guys soon.
Thanks,
Bye.
Mattison. Bye, Denise.
Bye.